everyone, this is Group 11. I'm Binky Yuan, and you will see my partner Tianyuan and Benjamin later today, and we will talk about a story related to incentive-based regulation. So, what is IB regulation? So its first name is incentive-based regulation, as we can see in the previous slide. Based on our textbook, pollution tax and cap and trade system are referred as IB regulation because they rely on market incentives to both reduce pollution and minimize control cost. And here are some advantage of IB system. First, IB system will promote more cost-effective regulation in the short run. IB system can incentivize companies to seek new technology to reduce pollution control costs. And moreover, the IB approach reduces the expense of regulatory information collections. Regulators simply can simplify the level of tax or the number of the permits, and then let the private firm instead take over. And then here are some disadvantages of IB system. So the IB approach has theoretical drawbacks, including critical issue of monitoring and enforcement, high concentration of local pollutants, thin markets, and price fluctuations. And for the IB system to be successful, in the long term, it requires a long-term plan, and that is consistently implemented. And so, this is the paper we're about to present next. And this is a paper published on the Journal of Environmental Economics and Management in 2018. So it's related to the IB system. So let me introduce some concepts first. So what is stock pollution? Stock pollution is the environment. Okay, so it's pollutants. That the environment has little or no absorptive capacity. That is called stock pollutants. Also, it is a characteristic of stock pollution to accumulate in the environment over time. Moreover, stock pollution will damage the landscape, release of toxic substance, contaminate land and agricultural crops, and the government need to spend a lot of money to solve the stock pollution.
Okay, so each developed economy has their own national committee whose responsibility it is to come up with financial regulations for resource extracting firms, often mining companies, and the various environmental fallbacks that come with these firms. In the United States, this committee is called the EPA, and in 2017 they announced its proposed financial responsibility rule, which would impact miners in that it would be forcing them to guarantee estimated waste stock remediation costs. And these would be calculated as directly proportional to the size of the polluted area in land. Meanwhile, in Western Australia, their own policy to deal with resource extracting firms differs. They instead employ a stock tax. The MRF, which is the equivalent to the EPA for Australia, imposes an annual levy on mine site waste stocks, and the pooled funds that come from these taxes are used on reclamation costs for historically abandoned mine sites. And this will likely be the case even far in the future. They have already made statements confirming this. So this greatly differs from the US system, and as we'll go on to see, they don't tend to remain consistent across countries. In China, for example, they have implemented a float tax on mining companies. And how this float tax works is that off-site mine waste stocks are taxed. And this is per quantity. So for every ton produced off of a designated site, for every ton of pollutants produced, it's a $2.30 fine in American. The purpose of the paper that we will be analyzing today is to compare and contrast these various incentive-based regulations imposed by the national committees across countries, and try to determine the advantages and disadvantages of different systems. Now we can use that to apply to our real life. The model proposed in the paper is a relatively simple one for resource extraction. It deals with an operator who is presumed to be profit maximizing. And the operator has three decisions to make in the model. These are the quantity of production, the quantity of polluting waste, and the length of the total production period. Those are the only three decisions the operator can make. The simplicity of the model abstracts it away from similar papers by contemporaries that typically tend to involve an irreversible capital expenditure on some abatement technologies. This has often been criticized by environmental economists as being unrealistic, and so this more simplistic model as proposed in this paper may have some more real-life applicability. The variables that are used in the paper are as defined. The finite homogeneous mineral reserve is R0. The extraction path is defined as QT, with the extraction cost being defined as C1Q. The mineral extraction generates polluting waste, which is lowercase at, and the accumulating stock of this polluting waste is capital AT, and this is to be thought of as land. The monetized social damage caused by the stock pollution is defined as D multiplied by capital AT, wherein D is a positive number. The operator can invest in technology that can restore the land to D equals 0 at any moment with a cost C3Q. And the operator may also choose to invest in operational abatement procedures costing C2. The cost functions, as explained in the paper, are very theoretical, so I won't go in depth, but it is important to know that the total extraction cost is defined using C1. The cost to undertake operational abatement procedures is defined using C2, and the cost to reset polluted land to D equals 0 is C3, and is proportional with the size of the polluted land. So next we'll be talking about and exploring some numerical examples found in the paper.
In order to have a better and concrete measurement, the author provided results based on 4 different firms. So the firm 1, it pays the stock pollution damage tax that leads to the insolvency. It allows it to further avoid restoration costs. And the second firm, it pays no stock damage tax, but it pays the restoration at the business closure. Firm 3, however, it pays both taxes and restoration costs, while the firm 4, it behaves similar to the firm 2 at the beginning, but it avoids restoration costs by placing their restoration in the permanently suspend mode. So in terms of those 4 firms, the author did a few quantitative analysis. The first analysis is focused on pollution flows and stocks. As we can see the picture for the left-hand side, which is shown in the green line, this is the firm 4, which did not pay any regulation fees, create a huge amount of the pollution. And another interesting thing is for the blue line, which stands for firm 1. It creates a large amount of the pollution at the end of the timeline. This is because, let's see for the right-hand side, this is because a huge decrease in the average environmental cost. And in terms of firm 2 and 3, those two firms pay higher average cost, so they have the tendency to produce less pollution. And another picture is focused on the pollution stocks. And there's a really interesting thing in the picture is that for firm 2 and 3, its accumulated pollution stock suddenly decreased to 0 at the end of the timeline and 12, which means the restoration cost helps firms to decrease accumulated pollution to 0 at the business closure. And another quantity analysis is focused on extraction paths. Since for the firm 4, it has no regulation fee to pay, it squeezed the natural resource so fast, and we can see there's a dramatic decrease in the green line. However, compared to the firm 3, which pays the most environmental cost, sees the lowest decrease for the natural resources. And for the firm 2's resource decreased faster compared to 1, which means that the damage tax did a better job in the resource protection. And another quantity analysis is focused on the profit paths and social benefits. So let's see the firm 3. Firm 3 paid the damage and resource cost, which has the lowest accumulated profit, and while it created the highest social benefit. This is because, as we can see for the previous slides, the firm 3 produced the least pollution to the environment. However, compared to the firm 4, since it has no cost, no regulation fees to pay, it helps the firm 4 to accumulate the highest profit. However, its firm 4's actions creates a negative externality to the environment. And also we can see the blue line, which stands for firm 1. It has a tendency that the profit externality end up with negative. This is also because, as we can see the previous slides, it produces constantly pollution to the environment. And another quantity analysis is focused on the offset pollution damage. We can see that the firms paying the restoration fees, which are the firm 2 and 3, creates more pollution and less social benefit compared to the firms paying the damage fee tax. So we can see that for the firm 3, paying both damage and restoration costs result in the most social benefit in the end. However, it requires a firm to spend a lot in the environmental costs. So in our conclusion, we can see this paper examines the impacts of 3 types of financial incentive and non-renewable resource extraction that produce a reversible stock pollution. And so let's record these 3 pollutions. The first one is stock pollution tax. And the author find that it eliminated the firm's incentive to delay redemption after closure. And another policy is from China, which is the flow pollution tax. It incentivizes the firm to make up the pollution, but it does not incentivize the redemption. But last but not least, this is the policy from America, which is a financial assurance over the redemption reclamation. The author find that the higher interest rate put off the redemption reclamation. This is because the firm has a higher incentive to save the money for the future instead of paying those fees. So here is our presentation question. So the first question is, as a large country in rich natural resources, it's essential for Canada to have appropriate resource conservation policy in place. Do you think it would be a good idea to apply incentive-based regulation in Canada? If so, based on analysis before, which incentive-based policy may work best for Canada? Can you explain the reason why? And for the second question is, the incentive-based regulation has been a popular topic of discussion among contemporary environmental economists for decades. As the need for environmental regulation becomes increasingly desperate, will incentive-based policy become more common in developed countries in the future? This example to support your argument. So here is the end of the presentation, and I will thank you so much for you guys for listening.